It's so good to see all of you. I do realize that there are a few of you that had an opportunity to participate in the summit this summer, and some of you that are joining new as a part of the CLC learning community or LFC learning community. And so I am very happy to be what I like to say, and with like-minded individuals that love the nuance of leadership, and we like to explore even deeper conscious leadership. And so we're going to spend some time today really moving forward in the conversation that we kicked off this past summer, and really go a little bit deeper today and create some more learning and a space of collective understanding about conscious leadership, and particularly as we talk about cultures within organizations, and then also just conscious leaderships as it relates to an origin story. If we can go to the next slide, Joel. And so today, what we will be covering is a deeper dive into the interview methodology that Joel and I had a chance to explore as we were doing some research, to prepare for our presentation this summer. And at the end of the summit, we asked for individuals to go out and get involved and take part in the discussion that we had by taking it forward back to their respective organizations by conducting more interviews, and really understanding how the contribution from those interviews, in fact, could create further collective understanding about a conscious leadership culture and those conscious leader origin stories. And so we're going to have an opportunity today, to make sure that you all have a chance to break out into those, what we like to say, opportunities to break out and experience the methodology, and you will be fully empowered with that interview approach and the ability to further contribute to our LFC community. That's really important to us. So we hope that as you're learning and hearing here today, and experiencing this, that we can just have a very enriching and engaging conversation, um, in the next, I would say, 40 minutes. We are utilizing the chat function, so we wanna make sure that you know that throughout the experience, you have an opportunity to just drop questions in the chat function. We have a smaller group here, so it's really easy just to engage and come off, also your, mute and ask any questions. And I do wanna just plug here for any of you that did not have an opportunity to, participate in the summit this summer, the recording is available, and we're recording this session today as well. So just know that the information that's being made available, to you to further consume post these discussions. And so again, I'm Shawntee Reed, and I'm going to be your facilitator for today. So one of the things that Joel shared is that he and I used to work together at Block, and I had the opportunity to, be the head of inclusion and diversity, for Block for 5 years. And prior to that, I've been, an educator where I'd opened an elementary school, in San Francisco. I've been a college and career counselor in K through 12, and I've also been an adjunct professor at a couple of universities. But I started my career in banking, in particularly between Chicago and New York. And when we were going through really conscious leadership, and Joel and I were in conversation around my journey, I wanted to share with you all what that experience was like for me, as well as what you will experience within the next, few minutes or so. So Joel took me through an interview process. And during that interview process, which was really an opportunity for me as a leader to really reflect on what my journey as a leader has been, from traditional leadership moving towards to being even more reflective around, my personal values, how they show up in a work environment, and or even when I'm leading teams. And so of course I'm walking, through that conversation with Joel, and Joel is taking notes, and he's very inquisitive and asking additional questions to really get at those heart moments, right? To really get at what is really causing me to make certain decisions, and or the way I may have interacted and engaged with different individuals. And you yourself think about, as leaders, either, even as an individual contributor where you may be managing projects or managing subgroups of individuals and you don't have direct reports, or for you that have direct reports, I want you in this moment to be thinking through now, when did I started leading individuals, and was I a traditional leader using standard practices, and did I move away from that? Have I evolved for that? So I want you to be thinking about that now, as I continue to share what my origin story was like. For me, it was all about, I went through a management leadership development training program, you all, and I received all the traditional textbooks and the language around here. You lead people, you don't manage people, you manage processes. Yet for me, I was still very much so leading through processes and not necessarily leading people and engaging people early in my management style. I was very process driven. What's the work to be done? How do you do the work? What's the output from the work? What needs to be done? Do you have the resources? And less about who the individuals were that were actually doing the work. And at the summit, I shared my journey, but I didn't go too deep into the choice point that was being made in my conscious leadership journey of moving from process to people. And that's what I want to share with you here. My origin story was, I was very process oriented. I was so focused on the end result, also because I was in a high pressured environment to get something done. And I was less focused on the people, the individuals on my team, like a Sandy or a Daphne, right? And I remember having moments with them individually where they shared with me as a leader, you don't see me. You're asking us to do the work, but you don't see me as an employee, the person behind the work, right? Do you care about me? Some of those tough questions. Do you care about me? Tearfully sharing this with me as a manager at the time, of not really seeking to further understand what it was taking for them to actually get the work done versus focusing on the output. And at that time, I was so caught off guard because, again, I just wanted people to get the work done. Let's just get the work done. High pressured environment. Let's just get the work done versus who Sandy was and what she needed on a day to day. And, or more importantly, what she was dealing with outside of work, that she was bringing the work, but trying to put it aside in order to be most efficient in her day. Or Daphne, who was taking classes outside of work. So working long hours in that day job, but also leaving and going home in the evenings and getting online or going to school, right? And that pressure that was coming on both ends. That wasn't in consideration at the time, you all. But what I learned through that feedback from them was, you can 100% be very focused on deadlines and outcomes and work that needs to get done, and be very conscientious of the individuals that are doing the work. Be very conscious of their values and how they're showing up work. And then I started to ask different questions, which was, what versus how did they need to get the work done? What was important in the environment in order for them to feel inspired and empowered to get the work done? And that, for me, was very pivotal moment for me in my leadership journey, to really continue to pause to understand, what if I'm going to create a culture of belonging where individuals really want to come and do their best and learn and grow and feel connected, I have to focus in on the people, right? Because we need the people to do the work. And so, and understand that work is going to happen, but you want people to come into an environment um, feeling as if they're connected to the work as well. It's difficult to shift for managers. It is. I mean, for me, I was caught off guard. But what was happening though at the time Like, I was brought in and asked to reduce size of team from, like, 9 to 2. We were consolidating offices. So I was also having to go through and downsize an office, and Sandy and Daphne were the remaining 2 individuals on the team. They were high performing, and they understood the workflow very well, but they wanted to be seen. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to feel like that. And so for me, it is a choice that leaders are making while holding, right, center to the fact that there is work to be done. And the example I'm sharing with you is this was the origin story. This didn't happen overnight, Taz or Linda. This was a recognition of, oh, this is what's needed. So how do I fine tune how I show up, right? And how do I continuously consider why this is important, right? And still yet have what's considered high productive, high performance teams. And so just know that I'm sharing this with you because it is a journey. Leadership is a journey. And I want all of us to start to get very comfortable with what our roles are as leaders. And then, in fact, those areas of growth moments. So when we're saying, I'm not quite there yet, that's still yet an opportunity to understand what's the one thing that maybe I can do. And so, next slide, we're going to share a little bit of what your role is. Because a part of the experience as leaders is, and this is something that we asked as a takeaway during the summit, is a part of your origin story and a part of connecting values to your leadership is to get really comfortable with a mentor or a mentee to share like who you are as an individual, right? Because that's something I also wasn't doing initially. People didn't understand my why, right? We know we're in high-powered environments. Our leadership is asking us to do X, Y, and Z, and then we go and we don't share the whole why. We're asking our teams to go and do a thing, right? That's no different than like who we are as individuals. We don't always share what our motivators are, our values, and you know what I mean, and or why we lead in the way that we lead. But surprisingly, you all, it's so important to do that because what happens, the individuals that you're seeking to influence and empower, you're more humanized. They humanize you more when they understand your why, when they understand the pressure that you're under, and you're communicating to them that we're in this together. It breaks down a barrier. It's a shift in the mindset of the individual regarding the task that you're asking them to do. And so, as leaders, it's so important for us to recognize that because this takes time, but it's necessary when we're asking you to grow in your conscious leadership. Right? And then and then the other right, Linda. So usually, yes. And so usually what we said at the summit is we wanted individuals to go out and identify other leaders that they could share their stories with, to interview using a methodology, and then having other leaders reflect and practice, right, on their conscious leadership journey and the reasons why they believe creating a culture of belonging is important. And a part of it is you have to step back and ask yourself, so what's keeping me from doing this?
Mm,
Right? And you literally have to say, what's keeping me from centering the people on my team? If especially if they understand the process and the work that needs to be done, meaning they're executing, they have the skills, you hired them, right? You've brought them in to do the work. But what would keep me from centering the people on my team? And often, and so I don't want to just say this and not give you like some pro tips. Centering people on your team comes through acknowledging the group as a whole at the top of a meeting. Great job, everyone. You've done da 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 da. Or it's literally acknowledging Kathy and saying, Kathy, great job leading this meeting. You've controlled our budget. You've kept us at this place, et cetera, et cetera. I want to recognize you for those efforts. It's also letting the team know, hey, team, listen, we've gotten some feedback on this particular part of our process. I know we've been working to reduce costs in this area, right? We've gotten some feedback that we need to do X, Y, and Z. Great job, everyone, keeping that top of mind. We have some areas we need to focus on. Or doing a one on one, right? Taking the time to not go right into the work and actually taking the time to understand, how are you doing today? How are you showing up in this call? Right. And then being able to acknowledge, woo, I just got out of a hot meeting. I'm coming into this call hot. Can I have 2 minutes just to, can I, can I have 2 minutes? Because that's humanizing you. Like there's many times I've come into one-on-ones with individuals and I've asked for a little bit of grace at the top of the meeting. Or when I've had a new person join the team, every person on my team already receives a quick survey. The survey is simply, what are the ways by which you like to be acknowledged? If we were to have an offsite, what are the types of things you'd be interested in? Um, if you do you like to receive public praise or private praise? What's your favorite foods? What's your favorite snacks? I literally have everyone on my team complete that, right? Because then you're seeking to understand more about the individual. So every new person would receive that. Fill it out. So then at an offsite you have these different types of things, snacks, whatever. It's just it's that whole thing of like, I see the people. I know my people. I know what motivates them, right? So I want to give you some of those pro tips. But I offer to you the one-on-one experience is a game changer because you want to create the space to not just go into updates. And if you're not having one-on-ones with your people, maybe you should do that. But I'm just letting you know, centering people doesn't mean that you have to negate process or the work to be done. I hope that's helpful. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So it's your turn. We want to create the space here together because we're about learning. We want to create or have you re-experience the interview methodology for those of you that went through the summer. We're going to pair you all up into groups of two. We're going to take about 20 minutes. And we'll do some brief introductions, but what we're going to ask you all to experience with us is the methodology around coaches leadership, the questions that we ask, right? Individuals, then when Joel and I were doing the research, and you're going to go through run round, and the experience here, right, is for those of you that haven't start to consider your origin story, all right, or your conscious leadership journey, you're going to have an opportunity to do this now. And listen, I don't want you to think too much about it. Whoever decides to be the interviewee, just flow with it. Just start to one, relax because you're probably in a work day right now. So this is a little bit of, let me relax a little bit and let me take some time to reflect, which we don't often have the time to do that as leaders throughout the day. But this is your time. And so the questions you see here is going to be all around, how have you become a more conscious leader? What makes up a conscious leadership culture? And how does that culture contribute to developing leaders and achieving better results? And then the last one is, in what ways have you witnessed your organization or community grow or regress as a conscious leadership culture? And the reason culture is underscored here is because you are a leader inside of an organization. That company has culture. Your team may have a culture. So it's hard for me to talk about leadership absent of talking about how you contribute to a company's culture, right? Or even build a culture within your respective team. How did the choice show up in one's origin story when you were going through the interview process? And when we're talking about choice, right? We're talking about the fact that on becoming a more conscious leader, do you recall in any of the conversations and the person that was sharing where that choice played a role? Believe it or not, we are consciously making decisions on how we show up, how we engage, how we convey what's important to us, how we convey what we need to do as a team, or even establishing, to your point, your standards, your expectations, your values around, being very upfront, right? That choice is being made. And but the turning point to what you're saying here is you invited someone in to be in conversation and make sure they understood that you were in partnership with them. All right. That choice could have been closed off. You could have just simply said, "This is how I do it, how I want to do it. That's it." But you made it very clear, right, that partnership was important, and that's what they interpreted as well, based on your values and you being very probably consistent in your approach. Paul, would you agree? Yeah, yeah. So the other question here is, and something that came up in conversation is, what attributes contribute to a conscious leadership culture? I know we're at time and I want to be very sensitive to all of you here. And this is just a question for you then to go off and ponder on yourself. Like, what is something you will do to build your conscious leadership culture? We want you all to continuously be thinking through that. And if we can just go to the next slide, this is what we're asking you all to do. This is how you're going to take action. And you can keep going and building that culture of belonging within your respective organizations is this. You've seen it. We want you to continue to be in conversation with folks within your respective organizations, the people that you either are have reporting to you or that you're reporting to, even with your leader, and start to share more about oneself, your own leadership journey. And particularly, I want you to really get comfortable talking about your why, the why around your values, how they inform your decision making, how they may show up during times of conflict, Lyndon and Michelle, and get really comfortable just being in that space because that's a part of the conscious leadership exploration and in your journey is who am I? And then utilize this methodology. You have access to the document. Go on and practice, right? Engage with someone else. So if you interviewed someone else, ask someone to interview you so you can be in that reflective state as well and to be considering where you are in your leadership journey, your conscious leadership journey. And then lastly, we would love for you to join an LFC leadership lab, right? And continue to collect and explore information. And that is through the utilization of a platform called Spark. So the last thing I'll leave you all with on the next slide, when you contribute and participate in Spark, these are the questions that they're going to ask you, and it's going to be associated with a particular picture. How have you become a more conscious leader? So further reflection, right? And this is me. This is the picture that I chose, right? Open hands in the flow of water, which represents my heart posture, right? The desire for all to feel welcomed and a sense of belonging and flowing in their talents and skills. Guess what? While focusing on process. I should have added that because you can do both. And then the other question is, what's the DNA of a conscious leadership culture? Everyone working together to build experiences, unifying and collectively working together as a community, leveraging their backgrounds and unique abilities. So what I like about Spark is that you have a chance to see and reflect on some of the pictures that they allow for you to feel connected to, but you also have that white space where you can share a reflection moment. I did appreciate the experience, and guess what, you all? It only took me up to, like, 7 minutes to get this done, and it's something that, can certainly be shared through LFC and an opportunity for you to contribute to it, and this create a mosaic for anyone that is actually participating in sharing the information together. So thank you all so much for showing up today for that expansive conversation. I'm gonna hand it back over to Joel to see if there's anything else we need to share before we wrap up.
Great. Just Shawntee, thank you. Everyone giving a round of applause.